When we're young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Good morning, everybody. How are we? I hope we're all right. It's episode 58. It's the 25th of June, 2014. And until about 10 minutes ago, I was being bombarded by lightning and thunder and flashing. And like a messiah, my guest, who's now waiting on the other end of the call, started speaking and everything calmed down. So I think we're in a beautiful position now. So let's introduce him. He is a man who since 2001 has had a fascination with coding and technology, starting work as a QA engineer for a company, which he quite readily admits that I can't find the right words that could do any justice to my time here. 5 to 10 lines of blank text should be more than suffice. He moved steadily through a series of positions that filled his days with programming and more than a bit of messing around. One company paid him whilst he joined a gang of eager programmers and developers to work on a slime basketball game. Okay, they didn't know they were paying him to do this, but more for them. They should have managed a little bit closer, I think. But when Microsoft took a chance on him, then things started getting serious. This was the moment when he realised that the time of playing was coming to an end. Whiz forward a few years, and he's now the founder of Blue Label Labs, a New York-based mobile design and development lab for iOS, Android, and Windows Phone. So how has he done this? How did he take the leap of faith that allowed him to leave the corporate environment as an employee and build his own business? One not focused on slime basketball, I can only imagine. Well, let's find out as we invite onto the show to start joining up the dots of his life, the one and only Bobby Gill. How are you today, Bobby?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
It's nice to have a New Yorker because I've been sort of moaning a lot about doing interviews with people in California when I'm doing it at sort of like 2 o'clock in the morning and stuff. It's quite a good time zone, New York. It's only 5 hours behind us. So what have you filled your day up in anticipation for this interview?
Well, actually, I've been trying to get a bunch of work done before this interview. So I've been working with my engineers to clear out a lot of bugs that we've been working on for some of our client projects. So that's typically my morning. And so that's what it was today. So
it's not slime basketball then?
No, unfortunately not. That was a fun project to work on way back in '03. And I still remember, the fun we had in that team room, building this thing right under the company's noses. But, I guess you do have to grow up.
So what is slime basketball? It's not basketball. This is going to be the most stupid question, and you're going to go, yes, that's exactly what it is. You're playing basketball with slime.
Well, two Slimer. It's not a very sophisticated game. It was an online like flash game, and you basically have 2 players on the keyboard, and you're controlling these little Slimers, which are just these these balls with a face and a smiley face, and they're bouncing a ball over a net and into a net between each other. Just it's probably Pong plus 15 years, so it wasn't breaking down any innovation barriers, but I used to play that a lot in undergrad, and I remember, hey, this would be pretty cool to build on .NET, and it'd be like a good learning experience. So it kind of, I saw it, and I'm like, okay, let's see if we can build this thing, and it set me down a path of figuring out a whole bunch of things to get it to work and be internet enabled or whatnot. It definitely had the light bulb go off in my head that I actually really do like programming, and this is a lot of fun.
I love Pong. I haven't heard that word for ages and ages and ages. And I've kind of stopped playing computer games. I'm 44 years old now, so I suppose I should have stopped playing them. But I remember, Pong, you could just pick it up and play. Space Invaders, you could just pick it up. Pac-Man, all those kind of games. Now my son plays, and you need to know the ins and outs of the person's character and the personality, and you have to read a 400-page manual to be able to play these games that he plays. Where has the fun gone, Bobby? Where has Pong gone? Will it ever come back?
I don't know. I hope it does. I think actually, you look at a lot of the games that have been really big on mobile. You look at Candy Crush and even Angry Birds. It's kind of gone back to the simplistic, very easy. You can just play with your thumb. So I think, I agree with you. There's a lot of games for like the Xbox and that where I'm just like, wow, I don't know what to do here. But I do think there is hope that a lot of casual basic gaming is becoming a lot more fashionable and popular in mainstream culture. So maybe we will. Maybe we're only a year away from mobile Pong to come out and break all the records and become the next App Store top seller.
What about Join Up Pong?
Maybe. I think so. I like the sound of that. Join Up Pong.
Join Up Pong. I'm going to trademark that instantly, and so that I can make I'll share. I'm going to share. I'm going to throw some shackles your way. I really will. You'll be all right. I'll look after you in your old age.
Okay.
So why is the fascination? I'll be honest with you. I haven't got a mobile phone. And I look at people who, my daughter, and hopefully she doesn't listen to this, but she's 22 and she walks out the bathroom with her phone, she walks out of her bedroom and she's just like looking down at her phone all the time. And I can understand, certain degree of connectivity, but why is, for example, the Prime Minister of our country obsessed with Angry Birds and doing those kind of things? I don't really get it.
Well, and it's troubling that, if the Prime Minister of your country is obsessed with Angry Birds, because you'd think, he'd have better things to be reading on his iPhone.
Yeah, exactly.
Or whatever it is. Yeah, I'm a quintessential example. I walk around with my phone in my hand, coming out of the bathroom, in the bathroom, going to the bathroom. And, for me, it's constant, information is being plugged in. And it's not so much, talking to people and staying connected, but, it's a little thing that keeps me entertained and keeps me, interested in something that isn't, staring at the back of the door. I guess, that's the benefits of our generation is that, we have these devices to entertain us. We don't have to, rely on speaking to people and other things to keep ourselves entertained.
But I'm not going to sort of like labour the point here because people might be having their breakfast. But when you're in the bathroom, Bobby, aren't you already entertained? You've got things to do. You don't have to be doing stuff like that.
Well, in a way, you are. But I guess sometimes you want to have auxiliary entertainment. In between the peaks and the troughs.
I couldn't have said it better. The peaks and the troughs. Right, I'm lost for words there suddenly. I don't know where to take the conversation. Right, okay, let's pull back from that one. Okay, so let's go right back in time because I am interested. When you was at school, before you actually sort of moved into being a QA engineer and the kind of technological world that you have encountered being an adult, were you always interested in computers? Were your dots lined up from such an early age?
I've always been interested in computers. Like I got my first computer, like a Commodore 64, when I was like in grade 6 and grade 7. And so I had always been tinkering with computers, but I wasn't really into programming. Like programming, like my cousin, he was 15 years older than me, and he was a software engineer. And I remember in grade 8th grade, he like showed me how to make like a very basic program on my Commodore 64. But it was really tough, and like it really dejected me actually from doing it. And so for a good 5-6 years, like through high school and early university, I didn't touch programming. Like I still tinkered with the computers. I used them every day and did a whole bunch of things. But I was kind of afraid of the whole programming thing, and that only really started to change when I got back into university and like part of the jobs I was taking and our course load where I was introduced again to it, and that's where it kind of started clicking. And it didn't seem so hard at that point, whereas before it was very intimidating.
Why do you think it was? Why were you scared of it at such an early age? Because I've been stalking you for the last couple of days and looking at your LinkedIn profile and your websites and all that to sort of get a flavour of you. It just seems like you were made for doing what you're doing now. So why do you think the little Bobby didn't feel that way?
Yeah, I think because it's very dejecting. Like learning how to program, especially when you're on your own, it's you run after one wall after another. So as a kid in like high school or elementary school, like I guess I just didn't have the perseverance to get through it. And I didn't see what the point was for me to sit there and do this when everything I would do would be belabored by hours of having it not work until for some reason it would work that I didn't understand. So it was very random. It was very hard. And I wasn't making very good progress. So as a kid, I would just go play outside or, go do something else. It really started to change, when I had a couple of good professors, where they explain some concepts, and they were able to kind of boil it down to a few basics, and then the blocks started coming together in university in terms of understanding how to actually write software and what software is, and the whole 9 yards.
Is it easier nowadays?
Yeah. Well, you mean for like somebody who's young to learn, or
Well, anyone. I can imagine if you went back into the sort of the Bill Gates early days and the Steve Jobs when they were messing around with computers, in their garage and stuff. It must have been just the fact that a computer, before those days would take up a whole room. And now you're doing it on tiny little software. Has the actual programming and the development become easier? Do people kind of build blocks of coding that you can just nick and put into something else to work?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like programming today, like as if I, if young Bobby was here today, it'd be a lot easier to pick up because of the internet. It's any problem you have when you're writing code, or any problem you're stuck in, just type it in to Google, and there's probably an answer out there in Stack Overflow or other sites for you to kind of build upon. And open source software, through GitHub and through a whole other things make, building pluggable software a lot easier. So you end up not having to write so much on your own, and you also have a very easy way to get help from other people. And like there's the collective knowledge that's online now when it comes to building software it's massive. And so, I don't think now, if I am teaching like my young nephews to start to program. They're like 7 or 8 years old. I think I look at them and they're like, their progress is so much quicker because they have all these tools that they can just easily go ask the question and get it answered. And the actual way they program, or they teach a kid to program, is like in a way that's accessible to a kid. It's framed like a game. It's got all sorts of kid type of behaviors. Whereas before, you were just tinkering with this toolbox that you really didn't know how it worked, and you were kind of on your own to figure out.
Do they learn easier or not as in depth? If you take the kind of the real movers and shakers in the mobile app world at the moment, do they know the subject in such depth that they're always going to be able to breeze past the sort of younger people that just kind of can learn it, as you say, by playing?
No, I don't think so, actually. Like in terms of like knowing, like having very good technical knowledge, or like being the be all end all master of the technology, I don't think that's super important. And I actually really come to believe that's because I remember going through my university class, I was never at the top of the class. I was always right there at the riding that curve. But at the end of the day, it's not so much how good you are as a programmer, or how technically adept you are. It's how are you good at designing product? Can you actually build something that people want? And get it into their hands. And so, I don't know the skill levels of like the top developers, the people who make the most money, but I'd hazard to guess that they're probably just better overall, entrepreneurs in terms of understanding product and what people want, rather than being, great programmers. And so I look at my nephews, I'm like, just learn the basics. You don't even have to become like a real programmer. Just know how things work, and you can start putting things together and actually get yourself pretty far.
Because that is the beauty of the internet. And that's what we talk about on a daily basis, really, where so many of the guests will put their hands up and say, I couldn't do what I am doing now 20 years ago. If I went into business, it would have been brick and mortar. But now with the online world, as you say, you only have to type in how to, and you can go to YouTube and see a video, or some kind of information will come up, and you can tutor yourself quite quickly and cheaply to get a head start on people, as long as you put the effort in.
Yep, absolutely.
That was quite a profound statement and a very short answer, Bobby. I was expecting more from you there.
It's true. I've learned so much, so many life skills from YouTube, and it's almost unfair. I appreciate it. I appreciate the benefits of the internet, I guess, because I guess I'm part of the generation that lived a bit before the internet and lived, after it. And, I remember going to the library, researching through encyclopedias, or looking through microfilms to do research. And then, 15 years later, you're just like, wow, it's just so changed. It's so different. Information's at your fingertips, that it's a completely different world. And so like our company, in terms of like, it definitely wouldn't have existed, even 10 years ago. And if you look at the way the company is structured, it's very virtual. We all sit in different time zones. We communicate over Skype. I rarely go to the office. It's very much a different world than we were living in, even 10, 15, 20 years ago.
When my kids come home from school and I say to them, you got any homework? And I go, oh yeah, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. I say to them, it's just Google it. All you got to do is go on the computer and Google it. I used to have to get on my bike. I used to have to ride down to the library. I used to have to look up the information. It was a big effort to do my homework.
Huge.
And now they just cut and paste and they whack it on there. I want people to go back in time and a bit of hardship. I don't want to go down to the mines and all that kind of stuff, but I want the kids of today to realise that it wasn't easy.
Yeah, I want them to know the Dewey Decimal System and have to deal with that and card catalog, all those things that used to make doing research just that much of an effort. And yeah, right now when I'm with my nephews, I make sure they don't go to Google to do their homework because that's just looking at the back of the book for the answer.
How do you do that though? How do you teach them in computing without going to Google?
Well, when I'm teaching about programming, they definitely let them go to Google. But when they're doing their homework and when they're doing stuff from school, I'm very kind of strict to not use Wikipedia or Google to kind of augment what they do. So, we have an encyclopedia set at home. Really, I'm like, go nuts, find the answer in there.
You must be the most hated uncle in the world. Uncles are supposed to sort of teach them to swear and mess around and stuff, not get them to do their homework.
I know. Well, I only come around every once in a while, so I gotta hit a number of different targets in these trips. So when it comes to academics, I try to be a little bit more strict than when it comes to playtime.
You've got a lot to learn. They will turn on you a little bit later in life, I promise you.
I'm afraid they will.
They're already turning on you, are they?
Yeah, they're getting there. I'm getting a little sass now.
So how old are you, Bobby? Because you've got a face. I'm looking at a face here, which is kind of, it's timeless.
I'm 31.
You're 31 years old. So when you were working for Microsoft, was that sort of round about the sort of the sort of early 2000s, or what kind of years were that?
That was 2005 to 2009. So I was 22 when I started there, and I left my mid-20s.
So that was your big opportunity, as I said in the introduction. That was when things started getting serious.
Right. Yeah, that was a huge opportunity for me. I was recruited out of school and I moved out to Seattle and I worked there for 4 years. It was a great experience. But after 4 years in a big company, it was a good job, but I wasn't like a perfect fit, and I was feeling very discontent, with what I was doing and where my direction was. And so it was the greatest opportunity I had, and I'm very thankful for it. But it was also the opportunity that made me realize that, hey, I got to go find something else that kind of makes me happier on a day-to-day basis.
So at Microsoft, you found, as I called it, your big dot, and it was a time when you hit your join up the dots, but that was your path, and from that moment on, you realised that an entrepreneurial world was for you.
Well, it wasn't even that entrepreneurial. I knew, when I went into Microsoft, I thought this was it, because I was 22. I'm like, yeah, I'm set. I'm just going to do this, and everything's going to work out. And a year or two into it, you're just like, wow, you're slowly disillusioned. I'm still enjoying my job or whatnot, but by the time 2008, 2009 came around, I was at the point where I was like, I don't know if I want to be in technology anymore. I don't know if I want to be, dealing with software and all the things that come with it on a day-to-day basis. And so business school started looking very interesting to me, because I was like, hey, there's all these other jobs out there. Maybe I should go to finance or consulting or whatnot. But I got to find something else. And by 2008, 2009, that's where business school, the idea of going to business school started coming in, and that was my next, that was the next dot for me at that point. The entrepreneurship had always been in kind of the back of my mind, but that never really popped into my head until I had gotten to business school, and I realized, that the other career paths I was looking at weren't as interesting to me as either, and so entrepreneurship became, kind of the path forward.
So was it just the size of the company that kind of made you fall out of love slightly with the sort of technological side?
Well, not so much the size of the company. It's more of just working in an organization it's, you can't set your own path. You're not free to go experiment and do the things that you want to. I was assigned to a certain product. I dealt with a certain set of features, a certain technologies. Like you're pretty restricted by your job in terms of the things you can do. And I wanted to experiment. I wanted to build things. I wanted to, figure out what mobile was about and be on the cusp of whatever new was. And so at like a company at the large tech firms, it's harder to be able to get those experiences because you're expected to deliver within whatever product you're working on.
So really, I suppose the Bobby that was messing around with the slime basketball was your unique Bobby. That was the person who was creating something, and something that you enjoyed and you thought was fun, and there was a playful element to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was very much, because you were setting your own path, and it was fun because you were creating something on your own, and the fun wasn't near the like at Microsoft. Yeah, that it was fun when you started, but after 4 years of working on the same product, the fun had been kind of milked out of it. I was very disillusioned at that point.
Which is where so many of our listeners are at the moment. When they listen to these conversations and they see people like yourself being interviewed, because you have effectively taken that leap of faith. It wasn't something that just come naturally to you. It was a step by step. There were dots to follow, wasn't there, all the way through. So when you left Microsoft, I understand that you went on a gap year or you went traveling?
Oh, I went to business school for 2 years. And so business school was pretty much a lot of traveling, and a lot of hanging out and having fun. But that was actually a great escape for me from the corporate world and the salary, because it's very hard. It's very difficult to like walk away from like a well-paying job to go start something on your own, because the uncertainty. And business school was the next dot for me, and it gave me the comfort to say, okay, I'm going to go to business school and figure out what I want to do for the rest of my life. And so I pretty much had 2 years to kind of think about, what I liked, what I wanted to do, experiment with other industries and see what they're like. So that by the time I came out of business school, I had a better understanding of who I was and the things that I wanted to do. And I kind of came back home to my roots where, I went to business school thinking, I'm kind of done with tech. I'm not going to be doing technology going forward. But at the end of it, I was like, you know what? I really like tech is my thing. I'm really good at it. I really enjoy it. I want to build a business in technology and actually kind of, return to my roots and embrace it.
Did you remember that moment when you were sitting wherever you were? You might have been standing, you might have been laying, who knows? And you suddenly thought, oh my God, I think the thing that I thought that I didn't want to do anymore is actually my thing. Because there must have been a part in your mind that you thought, have I wasted a couple of years, or should I have continued on that path I was? But there's a clarity that appears in all of our lives, and most of the time it is about what we were already doing previously.
Yeah, I remember exactly like the moments where these epiphanies happened to me in the second year of business school, probably around February, where everybody's starting to look for jobs, and you're realizing, wait, I got to go apply to these jobs, and the vacation's over, and I was looking at these jobs. I'm like, I was reading the descriptions. I'm like, that sounds terrible. Like these jobs, I was like, this sounds a lot worse than what I was doing before. And it was just, I had grown to the point where, no matter what job description was put in front of me, I was much more, I knew more about myself to kind of see, what it was that the job did and how it would or would not kind of mesh with my personality. And I was in class in February, and, starting to get stressed out because I didn't know what I was going to do. I was not doing any recruiting. And it started really just becoming clear to me that, I had to find my own path. And that, I was 28 at the time. I'm like, I'm coming out of business school. This is probably the last time I'm going to start with a kind of a clean slate in terms of not having to give up like a salary or, walk away from like a lot of money or opportunity to go start a business. From where I sat, it was like, I'm 28. I'm coming out. I'm not making money now. I'm in school. What better time is there right now for me to go figure out and at least try to start my own company and to kind of build something on my own? Because I knew that if I didn't do it now, at that point, like it's not going to get any easier. Like in 5-6 years from then, it's not going to be a better time for me to go start a company. it was very clear. It became very clear to me that, I don't know what the path forward is. At that point, I didn't know what my path forward was, and I really, I still don't in some manner. But, I just started to believe that, I had to go do this. I had to go try and see where it went, because at least then afterwards, I'd probably be more accepting of going to a traditional job or, going back into the workforce. But yeah, coming out of business school, that was the mindset I had. And I didn't have much of a direction or a plan. It was more of, let's take it one day at a time and see where it goes.
And it's that step by step. You had faith in yourself. You had a trust that you had the skills to be able to achieve. But ultimately, you had to take action and go out and do it.
Right. Yeah. And it's still the same today. Like I have a co-founder who helped. He started the company with me after I came out of business school, and he worked at Microsoft before, and he left Microsoft and his salary to join our nascent company, and so he took that leap. With the same thing in mind, where I told him I don't know how we're going to make money. I have the rough framework of what we can do, but this might not work. But I have faith that we'll figure it out. We're smart guys. I don't know what the plan is or whatnot, but when push comes to shove, things will happen, and we'll make things happen. And so that's kind of the only way to really approach it, because otherwise you'd just be killed by the worries. There's so many worries, and there's so many things you could sit there and agonize about, and it forces you to kind of go to ignore a lot of the superfluous things that you worry about. You focus on like the key things, which at that point in time for us was like, okay, let's keep the roof over our heads. Let's pay our rent every month. That's like the basic goal. Let's try to get to that and start building from that. And so, you do have to have a lot of trust in yourself, and you have to learn not to be plagued by the worries, and not to think too much about the worries, but rather, just have faith.
Yeah. And George Michael said that you've got to have faith.
Yeah, that was very poignant point by George Michael.
I know. I think we should all have more George Michael in our life.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's true, really. But we should have more Steve Jobs in our life. And this is a speech which I think really summarises what you've just been saying. So I'm going to play it, and then, as I normally do, I'm going to ask how relevant you feel these words are to your path and your path going forward. This is Steve Jobs.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
Do you need to believe that the dots are going to join up, or is it something more than that?
Oh, absolutely. It's a very good quote, because it really sums up the way I kind of approach it, is that, you have to believe in yourself and your abilities, and that, things are going to work out. At the point where I was 28. So looking back at all the things I achieved and, the places I had gone, I was like, okay, I'm able to do things. I've had some success in the past. I should trust in myself, that I'm going to figure this thing out. And so it still is every day. I don't know what we're going to be doing in a year. I don't know, what our 5-year plan is or the steps we're going to take. It's just, I continue to have faith in, myself, my co-founder, the things we do, and that, things are going to continue working out, because, we're dedicated to it. This is what we love to do. We enjoy what we do. And, we have a lot of perseverance, and, we have a lot of fun doing what we do. But again, there's very little in the way of a plan, and Steve Jobs is great about this particular aspect, which is, don't sit there and, plan out the next 5 years of, all the things you need to do to get to where you want, because, the minute you start walking down that path is, the minute that plan is irrelevant. And, you don't want to obsess about it. You don't want to really think about it. You just want to go do it. If you're going to go start a company, don't sit there talking about it, figuring out all the things that you got to get, cleared up and covered up before you do it. You should just go do it. Just go take the plunge, and trust yourself that you'll learn to swim.
And if you can't swim, get somebody to hold on to you.
Exactly, and at least you'll learn. And you would have learned, you definitely probably will learn to swim, but you would have learned a ton out of the whole experience, just in terms of, what you can do, what you like. That, even if it doesn't work out, I think as a person and as, from an experience standpoint, you're immeasurably better than just kind of stagnating or sitting in the same place.
It is amazing. You say all those words, and they have huge relevance to me, because I was in a career that I was stagnating. I was just going in and earning a salary and coming home. And I got to the point, I was 44 years old when I did this, and I've got families, I've got mortgage, I've got, all the kind of responsibilities that you would rationally say, no, I can't do this, it's too much of a risk. And even now that the podcast is going great guns, I still wake up every morning thinking, oh my God, what do I have to do? How am I going to make it go bigger? How am I going to self-automate it so I don't have to be here all the time? And I don't have a plan at all. Now, I kind of felt like I should have had a plan at the beginning, but I was also too scared to have a plan because then it seemed too big. I could do the first step and I could do the second step, but once I started thinking about what I wanted to achieve over the first year, second year, 5 years, it was too much for my brain to cope with. So I just didn't. I just kind of made a plunge and thought, hopefully, fingers crossed, my wife will support me and we'll get on with it.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of the way I thought about it too. Is that if you can make these plans, but those plans will haunt you. If you and who's to say the plan you make is even relevant? Like, it's just something you're written down. Like, and from a perspective, of it being a plan, when you go and start doing things, you start learning things. You'll be in a better position to make good decisions. Based off of what you've learned and what you've experienced. And so, I'm not much of a planner, to my detriment, and I guess to my benefit.
Are you a hustler though? Do you have huge flexing hustle muscles?
Hustling? What's that?
Hustle.
Sorry.
You get out there and you
hustle.
You hustle.
Hustle.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's what it's all about. Is you gotta from the get go. When we started the company, it was like, we got to pay our rent. So let's do everything. We'll take on any job. I'll go do anything we need to bring some revenue in so that we can do that. And so, at the start, when we started the company, we were doing a lot of things that weren't mobile related, that weren't actually what we wanted to do. But hey, it was a job and it paid. And we did it. And even today, we'll still do things because, you have to keep the lights on. It's on us to move the ball up the hill. So yeah, you got to hustle. And I think that's the key. You gotta be ready to do what you need to do to make it succeed.
Because I was never a hustler. I really wasn't. I was a floater. And I used to say that I was the luckiest person alive. I would just go like a twig on the mighty stream of life, and things would float in front of me, and I'd reach out and grab them, and they were just opportunities. And things always went my way. This was the first time that I've actually had to hustle, because if I don't, I'm not earning any income. There was no safety net. And it's funny, I kind of think I'm quite good at hustling, but it's taken me 44 years to realise, A, it's not scary. B, we have the technology in front of us to hustle across the globe, which still, the fact, and I say this so many times, it's a daily show, but hey, it's my show, so I can repeat myself if I want. But I find it amazing that we go bing and we press a button and I'm having a conversation with somebody in New York, or I was speaking to a lady this morning who was in Vietnam, and it doesn't cost me anything other than sort of broadband connection and, and a computer. That is so powerful, and every single person has got that. Not every person, but the majority of people have got that in front of them. They lift up their laptop, they turn on their computer, and they can literally change the world. It's staggering.
It is. That's the benefit digital technology has brought us, is that we're in a whole different place now.
Talking about the place that you're in at the moment, Blue Label apps, you create apps that other people have had the idea. So if one of our listeners is out there and thinks, I've got this brilliant idea for an app, I haven't seen it anywhere, they come to you, and even if they don't have any idea about how to do the coding and the design and all that kind of stuff, you can take it to fruition.
Absolutely. And so, we work with, we have a bunch of clients, a lot of startup clients who come to us, they have an idea, they have a concept of what they want to do, but they need kind of help taking it from idea and bringing it to the app stores. So, we have a team of designers who work with the clients to figure out the look and feel of these apps, and what should it what should the features be? How should it look? What color schemes? And then, we have our engineering team, which then takes that and kind of puts it together and, hands it to the client saying, hey, here's your app. On the other hand, we also develop our own apps and our own products. And so, we do a mix of both where, we'll build a lot of client stuff, but we also take the time to build and develop our own apps and our own products that we can, market and monetize.
Because you must be in the prime position where you're getting all these ideas from people and you build them to their spec and they're very happy and away they go. But you must be sitting there thinking, that was a good idea. And with that other good idea that somebody else has given me, we could put the two together and bang, global domination.
Yeah, I wish. What I've learned from the business, the years, is that it's less about the actual idea and if it's actually unique or really cool idea. It's more about the execution in terms of marketing the product, getting people to use it, and make purchases or do what, because that's the much harder thing. We work on, like, all the apps we've built have been great ideas. We worked on a lot of great ideas for our clients that didn't go anywhere. Then we've worked on some things which were kind of, plain. We're like, well, what is that? That's like the fourth app that does that. But, the client has got the hustling gene. He knows the market he went after, and he was able to make something out of it. So, in terms of, we work with, we have all these ideas that come in. At the end of the day, it's a lot to do with, how well you're able to actually build a product that people want to use, and how can you get it in people's hands, which is it's a much tougher equation. I wish I had the answer to that.
There are certain apps, I mentioned this earlier, I don't have a mobile phone, and to the day I die, I really hope that I don't have a mobile phone. I like to go to the toilet and just focus on what I'm doing. End of story. Okay. Yeah. And I think that's a moral for you, Bobby. I think you need to think of hygiene as well. Okay, because you're carrying that phone around. But people do these kind of appy things in front of me, and I remember driving in a car, and I just happened to look up out the window, and there was an airplane going across, and I said, "Oh, I wonder where the airplane's going." And my mate put up his phone and went, "Oh, it's going to Russia and it's landing." That is kind of so amazing, but absolutely pointless as well. Yeah. Hey, I love planes, so that's a really cool app. I know what he's talking about.
You'd be surprised what people will pay for. Remember I don't know if you heard like one of the first big apps to make it on the App Store in like 2008 was called iFart, and it just made farting noises, and people paid 99 cents for that, and they were the top of the App Store, and you're like, this is crazy. Why?
Well, it is crazy, because I could understand that if you left your phone somewhere, like a kind of mobile whoopee cushion. But that's only going to make that farting noise when it's closest to you. So everyone's going to think it's you, surely.
Well, I don't know. I've never really used the app. So I think it's like on-demand farting, where it's not so much like proximity, but you press the button, it makes a sound.
On-demand farting. That is a market and a subject I didn't think we were going to go into. We
can explore that in further depth if you want, but I don't think your listeners would want it.
No, not as they're putting Weetabix into their mouth and they're spluttering.
Oh, I love Weetabix.
Well, I know. I writ this. Writ this. My language has gone out the window. I wrote this down. You tweet a lot about Weetabix.
It's it's a secret. It's one of my. I grew up in Canada, and my parents, they always used to feed me Weetabix with like hot milk. And even today, every morning I start off with that. And, it's some amazing stuff because it powers me through the day, and it's healthy. Keeps you regular.
How many do you have?
Just one biscuit.
What? Just one in there?
Yeah, just one. That's I put some hot milk. I'm not sitting there trying to fill up for the whole day.
You're like a small baby. You need. I have 4.
You have 4 biscuits?
I have 4 Weetabix in my bowl, not every morning, and I don't have them with hot milk. That is like, babies eat rusks.
Yeah, they do.
You're starting the day on equivalent of a baby's rusk, hot milk, and one. That's not enough for a big man.
I guess not, but my eating habits have never been great. I've always been stuck in front of the computer. But yeah, I look, the day begins with Weetabix, and that sets the tone for the whole day. And generally most days get off to a good start because of the Weetabix, and so I'm a big fan.
I'm a big fan as well. And do you mash them up, or do you let them remain in their shape?
Oh no, I like it to get mashed up, because the hot milk does that, and so it's like an oatmeal-esque type of thing, but it's way better than oatmeal.
This is the greatest conversation I've ever had, Bobby. Who cares about...
People in the U.S. don't know about Weetabix. It's a very Commonwealth type of thing. And so, I like opening people's eyes.
In sort of the US and stuff, they don't have Weetabix?
They do, but it's not like, if I ever, I have to go to a special grocery store to get it. And like, if I say, what's your favorite cereal? Nobody will ever say Weetabix. And when Weetabix comes into the conversation, people are very puzzled.
And I bet it doesn't often, really, does it?
Yeah, not too. I like to insert it every once in a while, keep people on their toes, talking about things that they might not know.
I think if you insert a Weetabix, it will keep people on their toes.
Yeah, they'll be like, what is this Weetabix? It's got an X in it?
I went on holiday once. I'm going to bore all the listeners with this story because this is my Weetabix story. And I went to Spain with my wife and my family. And when we got out there, the exchange rate was stupid. It was like £8 for a sandwich. And the first bar I went into, I went, I can't pay this. This is ridiculous. This is highway robbery. And my wife was saying, you're on holiday, just pay for it. And I went, no, I'm not. And we had this kind of argument where words weren't spoken, but she knew that I was going to do my thing and she wasn't going to be happy with it. And so I bought a box of Weetabix, 48 Weetabix, and I had it 3 times a day. And I'd go back to my place and I'd have me 4 in the morning, and then I might have a light lunch with just 2. And then in the evening, I might have 3 again. And I was battling the Spanish exchange rate silently with my Weetabix. And we almost divorced over that. She felt that I was ruining the holiday for everyone. But you've got to make a stand, haven't you?
Exactly. You got to stand for something, or you'll fall for anything. So stand for the Weetabix. Yeah, I agree with you. That's what you got to do.
If there's any sponsorship out there going for Weetabix, both of us will sign up, and we will walk around Times Square dressed as a couple of Weetabix.
I'll build an app for Weetabix, and I probably won't even charge them for it.
There you go. We're selling the concept. So where are you going to go with your company, Bobby? So it's doing very well. And I'm looking at the website at the moment, and I'm seeing the Statue of Liberty, not the Statue of Liberty, what am I talking about? The Empire State Building float around in front of me. So do you have plans of where, you say you haven't got plans or you don't do plans, but where you can take it? Is it already global? Is it just sort of territorial? What's the size of your business at the moment?
Well, we're global in the sense we have clients all over the world, and since it's digital, like where we've built apps for people in Australia and Asia or whatnot. I think in terms of our direction, the loose framework we kind of think about where we want to go is we want to be we want to have our own products. We want to develop in our own concepts and build apps for ourselves, and so in 5-10 years, what I'd like to see us doing is, maybe not so much of the client service aspect, but rather, having a portfolio of apps of our own that, we develop interesting ideas, we put it to market, and, we're able to continue experimenting. And so, we got into this whole thing to experiment with apps and to build interesting things. In the long term, I'd like to see us, continue to build out our product portfolio and just have a wide variety of interesting concepts that, we've took a chance on and developed.
The only app that's ever come to my mind, I was in a conversation down in a pub once, and do you remember that scene in The Matrix when one of them, Keanu Reeves or something, was fighting off this person that would come out, and then another one would come out, and another one, and it'd be
an agent.
Yeah. Techie guys love The Matrix, don't they? I don't understand.
That's great.
But
it's a monumental film.
I slept through 3/4 of all 3 of them.
Wow. The last 2 are forgettable. That first one, though, I remember where I was when I first watched that.
And this person said to me, and this is one of the best pub discussions, if that scene was based with dwarfs, how many do you reckon he could fight off before they overcome him? Now, is that not the best conversation you can possibly have?
It's one of the best. It's interesting. It's a question that needs answering that people should think about, because it changes the game when you have dwarves into play.
Yeah. So if you was in a room now, Bobby, and dwarfs suddenly started running in after you, how many do you reckon you could fight off?
I don't know. They're short. They're stocky. I guess maybe. Well, because I don't think a dwarf is any easier to kind of fight off than a regular man, because a regular man's got a higher center of gravity, so you probably fall down easier. The dwarves are. They're lower. I think it'd probably just take 1 or 2 to take me out, because they could get at my legs and I'm tall. And so
14. I'm going to go with 14.
14. Wow.
14 dwarfs before they take me down. I would knock the first couple down.
Really?
Yeah, and then I would run very fast, obviously.
Yeah, I would do that. That's a great idea. I'd use my stride.
Yeah, until their little legs wear themselves out, and then I would just stroll back and take them off.
Yeah, that's a brilliant idea. Actually, that's the way to approach a dwarf fight.
I think so. I think, and then feed them Weetabix afterwards, just to sort of get them back into life.
I know. Yeah, bring them back.
Absolutely. So this is the end of the show, and it's been a great show because we've gone off on a tangent that I wouldn't believe. I think a lot of the listeners must be thinking, episode 58, did you hear episode 58? What were they talking about? But this is the end of the show when I get a chance to send you back in time like a young Marty McFly to have a sermon with yourself. And if you went into a room and you found your younger self, what age would you pick and what kind of advice would you give them? So I'm going to play the music, and when the music fades out, I'm going to remain totally silent because this is you on the mic. This is the Sermon on the Mic.
Here we go with the best bit of the show, the Sermon on the Mic, the Sermon on the Mic.
Well, I'm back in 2005, and I'm sitting in front of the 23-year-old Bobby Gill, and given almost 10 years since then, I think the biggest piece of advice that coming out of college and starting a new job back then that I think would have been very important for me to hear would be that nobody's got the right answer for most questions or most things you work on, it's not because they're incompetent or the problem's hard, but rather that there's very few things in life that have a right answer. There's very few things that are either black or white. Everything's a shade of gray, and when you're in debates or when you're when you're collaborating with other people or when you're working on a project, don't be afraid to bring up your opinion because you think it's dumb. You should never think that because your opinion might sound dumb to you or whatever's in your head, but it's guaranteed that if you put it out there, it might further the discussion. It might be the shade of gray that might be the right solution for the problem you're working on. So instead of worrying about, do you sound stupid, or is this the right answer, or is this the right thing for me to say, rather just say it. If it's on your mind and you think it's, if you think it's a good answer, go with it, because who's to say it's not, and who's to say that what you propose isn't exactly what is needed for a certain situation. And so beyond that, and a few stock tips, don't invest in that Ford stock in 2007. You're going to really regret that. I would hop back in my DeLorean and go back to 2014 and hope everything worked out for 22-year-old Bobby.
88 miles an hour. I hope you were going.
Hopefully. Well, we were flying.
Bobby, just before I sort of say goodbye to you, this is a question that I've asked a few of the guests. And when you took that leap of faith and you decided that you were going to create your own business and leave your salary behind, what super talents did you have that guaranteed success?
Well, nothing guaranteed the success. I guess the one trait, which has helped us the most is, perseverance and resourcefulness, where, it's a function of, just sticking with it and, being relentless and kind of working with the goal in mind to start the company, and then also being quick on the feet to adapt to new situations, to be able to to do the things that you need to do in order to get the business off its feet. And so I think it had much less to do with my technical skills or my abilities with a computer, but rather more of my ability to stick with the problem for a long time, and to bring interesting solutions or to be flexible and adaptable.
Bobby, I found you inspirational and motivational this afternoon, and I'm sure there's so many people out there that would like to connect with you. What's the best way to connect with you and your company?
Well, if you want to connect with me, you can either find me on Twitter at OMGBobbyG, or you can email me at bobby@bluelabellabs.com.
It's been an absolute delight to have you on the show. All those links to your social media will be on the show notes. Thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up those dots. And please come back again when you have more dots to join up, because that's the beauty of the show. Those dots will keep on going forward till God knows when. And I believe that the only way that we can really build our futures is by looking back and connecting our pasts. Bobby, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice that every successful entrepreneur practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.